culture in an organization, how that plays out, how people are trying to do the hard work in terms of building things like diversity and inclusion initiatives. We've looked at where cultures can go wrong in an organization, where you see misconduct at different areas. We've seen on the side of honesty and innovation, sort of looking, how does it operate in a company, and then how does it operate from the perspective of a regulator, and sort of how are these sort of trying to keep integrity within the business world. In this section, we wanted to do a bit more of a practical approach, really examining from different lenses, how are people incorporating social responsibility into the ways in which they build their careers and the ways that they act at work. So I'm very excited to sort of introduce this panel. So Tae Wan is a professor here at Carnegie Mellon. He got his PhD in business ethics from the Wharton School of Business, and he'll be leading the session. We have Sophanite, who is working for Govern for America. So she does their fellowship recruitment and helps with the strategy and the program development for that. And then we have Alison Smith, who has over 20 years of experience in investments. And as I requested, she's been doing social impact investing and learning about ESG before it was cool and became mainstream. Yeah, she made it cool. She was the trendsetter. She was the early beginner. And we have Eryn Correa, who has her own firm, Correa Legal, and she's essentially helping companies be able to create their legal infrastructure to hold themselves accountable to their values as the sort of pressures of building a business run. So with that, thank you, and I'll let Tae Wan take the stage.
Thank you. So I'm not a native English speaker, but whenever you have difficulties understanding me, please don't hesitate to just Tae Wan, say that again. I'm a theory guy, but just professor doing research about ethical theory. I have taught, however, I have taught MBAs for 10 years here. So MBAs want to learn something practical. Whenever I teach them, or from a deontological perspective, from a utilitarian perspective, this is wrong, inconsistent with the values PQR, then their question is, so what? So what should I do? What job should I take? What job should I take? And my answer is, I don't know. And I also say, you don't look good. I'm honest. And then, so I want to learn from you guys. So today we have 3 people who pursue alternative career tracks. So when you have MBAs, at least there's one MBA student.
Can't help with that yet.
Thank you so much for the. So, by the way, honestly, we don't have many audience members here, but that's not new. Since Socrates, not everybody has been excited about ethics. So I don't think we will see a significant change sometime soon. And this group is really uncommon commodity to national security and the society and for everything. Because here everyone is excited about meaningful career in ethics. This is very uncommon set of human beings. Outside the normal human distribution, I think. I know that. But probably next year, we can see more people. And one MBA student is very excited about ethics, but most of them are really excited about, please raise up your hand, please. And most of them are in our other sessions, like from IB, investment banking, or private equities. Next year, we'll see more. Okay, so I'm a theory guy, but this is not a session for theory. This is a session about your life stories and what you do, why you think they are important, ethical, and meaningful. So I want to begin with my story, if you don't mind. So my father went to prison when I was 15 years old. So my father ran a factory. I'm from South Korea, and then everybody knew the company name. the brand name, and it was a noodle manufacturer. The Asians love noodles, right? So, and then my father's factory took advantage of legal loopholes, and then they had the in-house counsel, right? Lawyers are smart, and so they knew, oh, we comply with existing laws, and here's a loophole. And then to compete with our competitors, we have to take advantage of this loophole. And then they did it, but courts not always say that is fine. Courts typically often say that sometimes, hey, from now on, we're going to say that that's illegal. And that was the first case about that read about the matter. And then my father, I just woke up in the morning and then saw my father's face in the first page of a national newspaper. I was very excited, proud of what happened. And then my mom said, Tae Wan, something is going on. Because I'm in the southern part of South Korea, and my mom said, I have to leave for a couple months, and then with the lawyers. And then they had great lawyers, and then my father was released after 1 month. But my father said, Tae Wan, I'm really tired of this kind of thing. Do business, you have to do something wrong. I don't like this one. If you want to study something, because I always said, Daddy, I want to be a professor. What do you want? I don't know, but whatever it is, I want to be a professor. And then my dad said, if you want to study something, you have to study about business and ethics. My father never knew the word business ethics. So his idea was that if you want to do business, the platform must be designed in a way that you do it in an ethical manner and then responsibly. And so I searched for, I remember that. And then later I searched for business ethics PhD program. There was one. So I applied for that and I became the inaugural professor of business ethics here. Thank you. And then it's a very honor to meet Erica Chung and Cynthia Cooper especially. I've taught you for 10 years. This is the first time to meet you in person. Later, let me have a chance to take a photo so that I upload that in my Twitter account. Would that be fine with you? Thank you. All right, thank you. So now, 3 individuals. And my first question to each of you is, could you please tell us about your life story? What do you do? Why do you do what you do? Any life moment that clicked for your choice now? And can we begin with Eryn?
Sure. Hi. My name is Eryn Correa. I am the founder and managing partner of Correa Legal, though I like to joke that's an aspirational title because it is a solo practice, at least for right now, meaning I manage me, but hopefully we'll manage more people later. And what I do is I work with startups and I work with social enterprise. And what social enterprise is B-corps, for-profit, mission-driven companies. So think Ben & Jerry's, but before Ben & Jerry's was Ben & Jerry's and instead was Ben and Jerry in a garage being like, it would be really cool if we make ice cream that also fights the patriarchy. And instead I work with people who are like, it would be cool, we're gonna make robots that also fight the patriarchy. So it's a really fun group of people to work with. As I was preparing for this, I was trying to think of sort of what the thread was that connected what I did, because I like to say I have a very iterative career experience. And I feel like I was driven by this desire to be of service. I was raised with this idea that I was afforded a lot of privilege, and in being afforded this privilege had a lot of responsibility to make the world a better place, but didn't really know what that meant or how I was going to implement that. So I went to law school thinking lawyers can help people. They know how to navigate a complex system. I can help people navigate a complex system. And in law school, did a lot of international work and thought, okay, I love this. I love the international side. I love helping people. I can marry these two things. And out of law school, joined a big firm and was transferred to their Dubai office pretty quickly into that. And so was an international lawyer, but still didn't feel like I was helping people, or at least not the way that I wanted to. And through this time came across the concept of B-corps and benefit corporations, and this idea that, to Tae Wan's point, that you don't have to have a business and do something bad. You can actually do well by doing good. And I was hooked by this idea. So I thought, okay, I'm going to change what I do. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do corporate work. I'm going to help people build businesses. And I want to get in-house with a company that is mission-driven, which I did. I started to work for Alcoa in their corporate secretary's office, which is Pittsburgh-based, very safety-driven, mission-driven, and thought, okay, here, I did it again. I'm here and where I thought I was going to be, and still didn't quite feel like I was making the impact that I wanted to. So there are a lot of factors that led to this decision, but I quit. I quit outright. And I went and I managed a coffee shop for a full year, which might have been a slight overcorrection. However, I needed some time to recalibrate what it is I wanted to do, the impact that I wanted to have, and how it is I wanted to serve my community. And through this was able to find ways to do that. Joined a nonprofit board that was sustainability focused, was consulting a bit on the side, and eventually started my own firm where I got to focus exclusively on these companies that are trying to make a social and environmental impact. And I stress this for our business student here. Two business students here.
Okay.
In that, you know, as I was going through this process, it looked messy and it felt really messy. And I don't think I would have ever predicted I would have been here owning my own firm and talking about this. And in hindsight, it's the best thing I could have done for how it is I want to serve the community I do, because given my varied experience, I'm able to work with startups who have varied needs. Working with startups in the social enterprise space, which is a newer legal space, I'm able to pull on that experience and, you know, help them come up with creative solutions to what they're doing. And then working in a coffee shop, I still have that skill in my back pocket if everything goes belly up. But also, it resonates with my clients that I'm also willing to take a risk and make sacrifices for the things that I believe in. And so as I look back as what I'm building my career, I'm really happy with how iterative it was, because I really see how none of these experiences were wasted in what it is I wanted to do and how it is I wanted to build this.
Very interesting. The most interesting part was your job as a manager at the coffee shop.
It was.
That is probably the moment that clicked.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Now, Alison?
Yes, thank you. When I graduated undergrad, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And so for those that are either mentoring or current students, I think you don't always have a path that's completely laid out. I worked for a nonprofit. I didn't like it, and in part I didn't like it because of the governance, which I think is, you know, sometimes people have an idea for-profit business are not always governed well. Well, nonprofits are not always governed well too, unfortunately. And then I went and worked for another company, and then I was doing investor relations, and then I worked for an organization for over 10 years where I got a unique viewpoint into how those that were business owners and entrepreneurs had liquidity events. And something that I had always been fascinated, especially from a lot of volunteer work I had done earlier in my life, was really focused around what made companies successful. And what I heard time and time again in different ways is we treated our employees well because it was good business. We did this because it was good business. And I started saying, oh, wow, those are not what I would normally think of as business factors. Those are what we would now call environmental, social, and governance factors, really falling into that ESG. So I said, you know, let's make myself a student of this, and just started absorbing it. And to correct Erica, I'm sure this is the only thing she's ever been wrong about, I've never made anything cool. But that said, I did make myself a student of it, attended a lot of conference, read a lot about it, and said, I think there's something to it, that it doesn't necessarily add to returns, but it certainly doesn't take away. And now I've actually changed that viewpoint where I think, you know, it does add to returns in the long run. And so you may look at short run over next quarter. And yes, there's tons of examples where that's not the case. But in the long run, understanding environmental, social, or governance risks and opportunities, I believe will lead to better returns. And so I left that organization I was with, went and ran an RA that was focused exclusively on impact investing, worked at a venture and real estate fund, and I'm now the managing director at Bernstein Private Wealth, where a lot of our clients are very focused on ESG factors, and we're eventually looking at, across our entirety of our platform, the ESG factors, really to understand those risks and opportunities, but also threading that needle into it being better business. And I would say, there hasn't been one moment that clicked. It's been lots of little steps. And it's little steps that over time, I think of saying, wow, this is really something that I can add value to, whether it be our clients or the business or society, but also is really true to something that I think gives myself meaning and my life meaning. And it's really hard for somebody in undergrad or even graduate school to say, what's going to give me meaning? But I think making those little steps and those little changes and directions, and also saying this does not work if you're at an organization that isn't working for you, is what eventually leads you to the path that is, of course, going to give your life the direction that you're looking for.
I really appreciate the term that you use, the countless little moments that clicks every time. I shared this question with my wife last night, and she really said, hey, Tae Wan, really don't ask this question because you wanted to be a professor since 2 years old, but you are very different from most of us. And then you are looking for one moment that clicks. But most people still, my wife said, I'm still looking for what I want to do. What is really ethical, what is most meaningful. And so I asked the same question to my son, that, hey, what do you want to be? My son said, I want to be X, Y, Z. And then I asked the same question to my teenage daughter. She said, I don't know, Daddy. And my perspective, maybe it's pretty dominant male, perspective is you should have one dream. At least you have one. But I think that's really not a good way to educate children and students, because unless you have a very clear goal, your life is not, your future is bright. I don't think that is really a good way to think about ethics and meaningful life. Maybe other people have different ideas, but I think Alison, your view about it, countless little moments that clicked every time, added up, and then create meaning. I really like that idea. Thank you. Appreciate it. So we have a Sophanite. She has a distinctive background here. So both of you are from a corporate world and for-profit, and then a little bit of, but Sophanite it works for an organization that offers some training programs to those who want to move on to the governmental jobs.
Yeah.
So we are interested in your life story and the countless little moments that click.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Sophanite Gedion, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs at Govern for America. When you zoom out, you can see that Govern for America is a leadership development organization, but that's not really what's going to get me out of bed in the morning. I really like to think that we're doing hearts and minds work, and I'll get to that later. But more on me. I'm the daughter of 2 immigrants, Ethiopian immigrants, who fled Ethiopia during the Red Terror. And I watched my parents put community at the center of every decision that they ever made. My mom really showed up for her community, and I would say this isn't an inflection point, but more like a role model in a way for me. She was an advocate. She volunteered for community. She was a master navigator of bureaucracy, and she volunteered to do translation services at people's immigration court hearings. She used our business's address to help people get registered for our school district so they can get into a better school district. And growing up, I actually found that to be really annoying. It took up a lot of her time, and I just wanted to have as much mommy and me time as possible. I think the critical inflection point for me was when she was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer when I was 19 years old. And watching this strong, fierce advocate for others need that person in her life, and seeing that that was so missing in the system that we were trapped in. And yeah, I think that was my critical inflection point, is seeing the power of advocacy from a position of my mom lacking it, and then also watching her be that person for others. And being the daughter of immigrants, I think I relate to what you're saying, this idea that like you should have one path, because my parents always came up to me and said things like, are you going to be in business? Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? There aren't any other kinds of jobs.
I don't think your parents are Asian, but
No, but maybe. No.
sorry. No
you
more
gonna-
race joke. I'm sorry.
Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? Are you going to be a business person? And then the place that they eventually ended up pushing me into was teacher, because I went to work into K-12 education. Most of my family still thinks I'm a teacher, to be completely honest with you. And I've always just been on this path of public service, watching my parents live in such an intentionally community-centered way, and feeling as though there's nowhere else to be for me when we're spending the majority of our waking lives at work, and I refuse to do work that I have to do some sort of long-form calculation to figure out how it's going to benefit society. I wake up and every day I know that what I do is going to help change the face of government, and that brings us back to what I do. As a senior director of programs at Govern for America, I get to set the vision and strategy for our fellowship program. We believe that by placing young, diverse, dynamic talent in government, we are going to build a new generation of public servants who can really be more reflective and representative of the communities and create policy that's more sustainable for that fact. And that's especially important right now because about 30% of state-level employees are set to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. And so we have an enormous opportunity to really change what our policymakers look like and the way that they practice. Are they going to be trauma-informed? Are they going to be community-centered? And proximity to the pain should also equal proximity to the power. So that's me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I ask how your mother is?
She's passed, actually, 8 years ago tomorrow.
Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
So now it's let me turn to the second question that I wrote last night, which my wife disagreed with. So, so a little bit of specifics of each of you. So I'm curious more about some of the specifics of the content of the training that you offer. So who applies for, and suppose that some of us want to have some learning, education from your organization. So what is expected to do, or what is expected to learn?
Right, so the people who apply for our fellowship, our recruiting and selection manager is here, and she does a much better pitch of this than I do, but I will do my best. So the people that apply for our fellowship are typically folks who are in the last year of their academic program. The majority of our candidates are coming from undergrad, but we do have some coming from master's programs. And when we're talking about the curriculum, we're really rooted in 9 leadership competencies. I'm not going to name all of them, but some of them are equity.
Wait a minute. Fellowship means it's free?
No.
I'm sorry.
That's a great clarifying question.
Okay.
The people that we place in state-level government are full-time government employees. So they are getting full-time government employee benefits, full-time government employee salary. Very important at a business school to be talking about the money. But yes, So we are giving them training around collaboration, and we bring subject matter experts to do work around mediation, trauma-informed policymaking. We also want to focus on wellness and this idea that you can't have a sustainable career, you can't have a lifetime of service if you're constantly pouring from an empty cup. And so we spend a lot of time and space helping fellows reflect on the work that they're doing and how to do it well. What is the form, fuel, and focus? What is their why?
That's helpful. So, okay, good, thank you. Now, question for ESG. So ESG is a big word now. It's a golden age for ethics and ESG in finance and Wall Street, and I never seen since my PhD training, I never seen this type of demand, societal demand for ethics for the last 20 years. This is golden age, and ESG is one great perspective to gauge, people's demands, and recently I've been invited to give a talk about ESG in Rome, next month, and then I saw the list of speakers there. I know every one of them, and no one really knows ESG, including myself. So this, I'm serious, and then so because we are theory guys, so suppose that one company comes to you, and then the company is really interested in ESG, and then what's next, and what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. If it's a client and it's a family or a foundation and they're interested in ESG, first I would start, which is pretty much the kind of conversation I would start with anybody, and asking questions, really understanding what they're interested in and what they care about and what they mean when they say ESG. I know how I define ESG, but it may or may not be the same that they are. In addition to that, when thinking about ESG or impact investing or purpose-driven or SRI, there's all different ways that people are thinking about these terms, and there are strict definitions. And certain folks may be looking for something where they may be looking to eliminate carbon from their portfolio, or they may be looking to focus on diversity and inclusion, or they may be looking at any number of factors, or they may be looking at the holistic aspect, or they might be looking for a specific company. So it's a really long way of saying that it depends. But when I look at ESG, there's also, it's an analysis that's done of a specific investment to understand the risk and opportunity factors to make better investment decisions. And so when I'm thinking about the E, it's how does this specific investment, and it's different if it's a fund versus an early stage investment, but how does this specific environmental factors play into the investment? And for the social, it could be diversity and inclusion, or any number of what we'll call social factors that play into it. And what is most important to me is governance. Because I think if you get governance right, you can get the other two right. If you don't get governance right, your company has significant issues. And so governance is really, really important. And I would say that it's important for folks when they're thinking about companies that they want to join. And maybe it's a really cool company that I wouldn't say is going to be that impactful, but it's really fun and it's really cool. You got to make sure the governance is right at a minimum, no matter what you're doing, because it's how you're going to treat your employees, it's how you're going to treat your clients, and it's also, to some degree, how you're going to treat your investors. And if that governance is wrong, I think everything else gets washed out. So, but whenever I'm talking to clients, I like to ask a lot of questions because I like to really understand what they're looking for and what they mean, across the board.
I think it's saying governance is most important. I think it really makes sense. And also that makes ESG distinctive from other predecessors like CSR. Corporate social responsibility is typically charitable without necessarily making changes to the governance structure. Or CSV, corporate shared value. It's almost the same thing as CSR, but does not have much impact, emphasis on the governance. SRR, socially responsible investment, so governance is, I think, very important. I think that's very important insight.
Well, and I would also say, especially because to some degree we're a diverse group on the stage, having someone who at least touches to some degree on potential nonprofits, and someone who works to some degree in government, it's really thinking about the right solutions for different problems. And some of those solutions I think are best solved by policy change, and some are best solved by foundations, and some are best solved by investment. And frankly, there's some major problems that cannot be solved unless you're moving investment dollars in that direction, unless you're really understanding that companies are looking to solve them in a really significant way. And I don't think you have to do so at taking a hit to your portfolio or performance.
Just one more question before moving to Eryn. So I'm personally curious about the motivations behind your clients to get interested in ESG. So just humans have many different motivations, but let's make it very simple. Two things, intrinsically ethical motivation. This is the right thing to do, no matter what. Instrumental motivation, or bottom line argument from a long-term perspective, whether it is a long-term or short-term perspective. And I think humans are very complex subjects, so we have both of them at the same time always. It's just suppose that I teach ethics. I think it is important thing intrinsically, but at the same time I take this as instrument to feed my family and to get salary. And I think there's nothing wrong with having these two motivations at the same time, unless I have both of them at the same time. But so my curiosity is, do you think your clients have both of them or only bottom line argument? Or I'm not saying that having bottom line argument is totally unethical.
I mean, I think the answer is it depends. It's hard to know what motivates people. There are certainly individuals there's a gentleman I spoke to years ago, and he believes that in climate change and therefore wants to protect his portfolio from it, period. It's not what I would say a moral or values or other thing. It's really a sense of wanting to protect his portfolio. That's it. Would I say that's not ethical? No, I think it's ethical, but I think it's at the same time, his real cause is focused on the performance aspect. There's other folks who say, oh, we have a foundation and we're giving away 5% a year. We want to make sure that our grant giving is in line with our investment portfolio and not undercovering it with the other 95%. So it's really hard to say, except for specifics, what motivates somebody to do something. And then to some degree, there's also a number of families where younger generations care deeply about social issues. Maybe the older generations have read that it's not going to take a hit on their returns, and therefore they're saying this makes a lot of sense for us, and it's allowing that family to educate on personal finance, which is something that is not overly complicated, but isn't interesting to everybody. And so to have that as a really bonding moment can make sense. So that's, again, a long way of saying that it varies and it depends, but I think it gets to what's somebody's reason for moving in that direction. At the end of the day, to a lot of things in life, you can't have your cake and eat it too. When it comes to ESG analysis or impact investing, I think you can. I think that it actually leads to better performance over time. At least that's my personal belief. And I think that people with that realization that they can have something that's near and dear to their values and not have to lose out on any financial performance just feels like a no-brainer to a number of clients for whatever reasons. And it may be the ethical reasons, or it might be another one.
Thank you. Move on to Eryn. So you are a lawyer, and then I know law too. Anyway, so you work for corporations who want to become a benefit corporation or B-corp, right, and or already certified as a B-corp. Or so could you give, because not everybody is familiar with these terms, and so benefit corporation is a legal addition to the C corporation, S corporation, and B Corp is a non-profit organization that certifies corporations. So a little bit of distinction, definitions, and then what you do specifically, please.
Sure. So you described it correctly, which is
Thank you.
Well done. Yeah. So benefit corporations are a legal entity. So it's like a C Corp or a limited liability company. It's available in 38 states, including Pennsylvania and Delaware, which is significant that it's available in Delaware where many corporations are incorporated. But it changes the duties of the directors and officers. So commonly, we say that directors and officers of a corporation have a duty to maximize shareholder profit. And that's sort of the goal that a corporation is working towards. Benefit corporation changes that calculation a little bit and says, yes, you have to be concerned about the shareholders' bottom line, but you also need to be concerned about your stakeholders, anybody who is impacted by the decisions that you're making. So that includes your employees, the consumers, community, society, and the environment. So it opens up a little bit more risk, which lawyers hate risk, which is why this is a little bit of an interesting place to get into, especially with startups who are all risk and say, here's all of this risk, you're starting this new company, we're also going to add this other burden onto you, which is as you're trying to build your product, whatever that product is, you also need to be considering how it is that product is impacting your community and your employees. And so because of these corporations that are organized like this, it becomes the organizing principle by which these companies are making decisions. What I do is try to put guardrails in place so that they can make these decisions, so that there are processes in place that they can make decisions based on their values, based on the impact of their stakeholders, and not just towards the profit-making motive. Because there will be an inflection point where they're going to have to make a decision between here is something that's easier to do and makes me more money, but here's something that's in line with my values. And how do I make sure when I'm in this decision-making inflection point that I go towards my values? So I would say a concrete example of how I've helped one of my clients is there's one client who's really concerned about diversity on their board to make sure that they have a significant proportion of women on their board of directors. The board of directors is the entity within a corporation that sets the strategic vision. And so it's really easy to say, I want more women on my board. But what does that actually mean? And how committed are you to that principle? So what we've done is we've actually amended their bylaws, which is their foundational document, their foundational legal document, to say that a third of people on their board will be female or female identifying people. And that's significant because that's hard to change. It is in their foundational constitution that now they have to do this. So every year when we're electing their directors, we have to look at this provision and say, did you do this? And if not, why not? Because now you're in violation of your foundational documents, and that's a problem. And so it really is taking these values that these companies espouse and making sure that their legal documents reflect them in a way that it can be a sustainable commitment to these values over time.
Thank you so much. So in my understanding, in theory, without being incorporated as a benefit corporation, you can say that in your corporate chart that the goal of this company is not profit maximization in the chart, and there's nothing wrong with that. So even if you can say that the objective function of this corporation is to maximize the number of red potatoes in the world, it's a contractual matter, right? But and also there's no solid foundational definition of what fiduciary duties in our U.S. law, and so it's always back and forth. But one big advantage of, as you said, benefit corporation is that you don't have to worry about that hassle and controversy and debate, right? So that you can just it's explicitly declaring that this is benefit corporation or B corporation. Could you still some of us, many of us are not really familiar to. I think I'm a big fan of benefit corporation and B corp actually. So could you introduce us maybe some example, one big example that is benefit corporation or certified as B corp, so that people is that B corp or benefit corporation? And any example you have in mind?
So big ones that you would probably know is Unilever or Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia. And so these are companies that might not necessarily be addressing social or environmental issues with their products and services, but the way that they run their company is mindful of their impact. Yeah.
So they create two different reports, right? One for profit, the other for ESG and social impact, right?
So the goal is to have it integrated, right? So that it's not something that is separate, but is something that is foundational to the way that they run their company and make decisions. I would say those companies still do, if they are benefit corporations, legally they have the requirement to issue an annual benefit report, which means they do have to report on these things separately from their other reportings, yeah.
Is Patagonia B Corp?
Yes.
I see. Okay. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. So as time goes, the third question, which I think may be a little bit challenging, but I know that you're really nice human beings, so if you don't mind, I'm going to ask this question. Is your job ethical and meaningful? If so, why? Sophanite.
Yes.
Okay,
Next? No, I'm just kidding.
tell me why.
I think that the work that I do is about trying to balance the inequities that have been injected into our system over time. And I think that this work that I call like my heart work, is ethical in that it is trying to right the wrongs of the past and inject people into institutions that were not just created without considering them, but were created to keep them out. And beyond helping them get into those places, those positions of power, and helping them acclimate, it's also giving them the tools to agitate so that future generations don't have to experience the systemic oppression that this generation is experiencing.
Awesome. I think you have to be hired by CMU because the CMU's motto is, you said that heart and work. Mm-hmm. The CMU, do you know what CMU's motto is?
No, what is it?
Heart is in the work from Andrew Carnegie. Yeah.
Wow.
We don't have a sabbaticals. We
Campus in
only work.
various places.
All right, thank you. All right. Alison,
Yes.
thank you.
I think that, integrity and, when I think about, do my kids know who are little, do they know the difference between right and wrong? They certainly do. And so what stuck with me with one of the previous presenters said is really being able to stand up when you see something that's wrong and developing a culture that's surrounded by listening to those voices and appreciating those voices and to say, let's always move in the direction to doing things that's right. And so really all that falls into, for us, is serving our clients well, thinking about our colleagues, and moving everything in a direction that we see as positive. And so I feel in a really fortunate position where we're certainly client first and centric, but in addition to that, also really being able to think deeply about the investments that we're making and how that they can have a significant impact on the world at large. And so it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's also, I would say, goes deeper than that, and having an environment where people are generally wanting to be helpful to one another and wanting to support one another and allowing for people to ask questions and have a really deep dialogue. So I don't know if I would say that's my general definition of ethics, but I think it's really important for my day-to-day work and to enjoy it in a deep way. And also I would say for folks that are younger and still figuring out what their career path is going to be, at my firm there's 8 different ways that an associate can go, and there's a lot of training and development that's focused on moving them in a direction that's going to be right for them, which leads to a lot of people being there for 20 years or 30 years, which I think shows that people are really appreciating the environment they're in, and people speak with their feet.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Eryn?
So I will say yes, even though I'm a lawyer and I know we have a bad reputation. But I think that lawyers can be such a helpful partner. And I think, my original instinct that lawyers can help people navigate a difficult system is true. I would say very specifically with what I do and work with business is that we see corporations have such an outsized impact on our lives. And that can be in a great way, thinking of all the technological and medical and other advances that corporations have made that change our lives. And it can be in a really negative way. For so long, we've allowed corporations to socialize the risks and the costs of their business while privatizing the rewards of that. And I think it's time to rebalance that. And how we rebalance that, at least for me, is let's get them while they're young. Let's make sure that these values are incorporated into these companies from the get-go so that when they're growing, we're not having to come in and turn the cruise ship. They already have these values sort of incorporated from inception. And so I would say that is how I think, this is how I think legal work can be a really ethical way of going about things.
Thank you. So last question, and it could be quick or longer, doesn't matter. When you go outside here and then go to the second floor, you will see a number of students. They're working hard, studying hard, for what? Realistically, to get a job. And job. They think about all the time, job. Any advice to them? Looking for jobs, maybe narrow-minded? I know you look young, but you are a little bit more mature a lot mature than them. So any advice to them? Undergraduate students or graduate students or working on the job market?
I would say when they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them, and make sure that it's a right fit. I think as one of the previous speakers said, that it would look bad if you left after 3 months. Well, it may or may not, but I think really that's your opportunity to figure out if they're an ethical organization, if they're governed well, if they're going to be something that's going to be a good fit for you personally. And so I would say make sure that you're asking those right questions. And I think those that are driven and work hard will have lots of opportunity, but you also want to make sure that it's opportunities that are the right ones.
Thank you. Next.
Go ahead.
Sophanite.
Yeah, so Govern for America places fellows in these roles for 2 years. And at that second year, about halfway through that second year, our fellows come to us starting to feel a little bit of anxiety about what is it that I do next. And what I tell them is to try to operate at the intersection of their passion and their purpose. What are they really good at? And then what do they think is really important in the world? In our interview process, we ask candidates, what is the change that needs to happen? And what is your place in that change? And if the work that you're applying to do could be used as the answer to the question, that's probably the right role for you. So I think that's my whole answer. Also, to be patient with yourself. I think that cultivating a career, a meaningful one, an ethical one, takes time and evaluation and reflection. And a lot of people don't give themselves the gift of reflecting on their personal why, and that changes over time. So be honest with what your personal why is, and don't let other people's perception of what is important impact you. Don't be seduced by scale or what you should do. Try to really center yourself in who you are and what your place in the change that needs to happen in the world is.
That's an important point, yes. The last wisdom.
Sure, no pressure. I would say that really focus on creating a community around you, because the best thing that I have done is continue to seek out people that I just thought were interesting. And on the one hand, yes, that can lead to a job through your network. But the flip side of it too is, as I have continued to follow the interests I've had, I've talked to people that I thought were interesting. I think the organizers of this panel can attest that I'm very persistent when I find something that I want to be a part of or people I want to talk to. And I would say, as I've built my career, and as we're talking about this sort of iterative process of building a career, you build together these people who overlap with you and inspire different things in you. And in doing that, it can open up really interesting avenues that maybe you didn't think were there before. and then you can lean on that community as you continue to go forward.
Thank you. So this is the end of the conversation here. Now open to the floor.
I have a question to start about ESG. As Tae Wan mentioned earlier, it seems to be popular. You know, there's panels there, and of course, it's become politicized. And so, Alison, I'm very curious your thoughts as ESG has become politicized with very polarizing views on either end. And so, you've been seeing ESG from the early days and how it's progressed, and now how it's gotten more attention. So, what are your thoughts as you've seen the conversations about it in the media and politics and elsewhere?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of topics now that are being politicized that shouldn't necessarily be politicized. So when you're looking at ESG analysis as a way to evaluate risk and a way to see opportunities, you know, it's really hard to politicize that, though people do. And so it certainly is something that I think, you know, so let's say that you don't believe in climate change, but you do look at the data and you see that that the temperatures are rising. Maybe you think it's man-made, maybe you don't. You know, different people have different opinions. I have a very strong one. But that said, you know, you still want to hedge against and protect yourself against what if. And you want to make sure your company or the companies you're investing in are prepared for that. So, you know, it's like the worst case scenario is it's dire for a company that you've invested in. The best case scenario is that you prepare for that risk appropriately, and therefore it's in effect an insurance policy. So I think all of the political nature around a lot of these questions, I think, are a distraction, and they're a distraction from the way that things will move, whether it be in finance or many other topics with the recent COVID crisis. I think it all is a distraction, and just kind of resetting that and saying, how can we make things better? How can we figure out what's the next best step? And how can we use data, real data, to make smarter decisions, I think is the way that I look at it. That said, there are certainly folks that don't want to talk about my thoughts on impact investing in ESG, probably coming from a political standpoint, and that's perfectly fine. So just really making sure that it's moving in what I'll call the right direction. And the number of dollars flowing, even as energy has done well in the past year, the number of dollars flowing into ESG products or impact investing financial products shows that it's not going away. And so, I think it's already, the decisions have been made because people, like I mentioned earlier, speak with their feet. They also speak with their dollars.
Open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. Eryn, I really liked what you said about C Corps socializing risk and harm, but privatizing the benefit. And then Alison as well, good business is good business with ESG. What are the mindset differences in the leaders in these types of companies that are looking at either running a C Corp or a B Corp / ethically concerned company? What are the types of things they're thinking about? And if you could speak to that a little bit.
I'll let you start. Sure. I mean, a lot of them are mostly concerned first and foremost about their employees, which is a really nice place to see them start, especially when you're working with early stage companies that don't have a lot of capital and are used to using their employees as a bit of a commodity in order to build what they're doing. To see people who are really concerned about giving their employees health care, to make sure that they have adequate vacation, adequate pay, is a really significant difference I see between people who are committed to this and people who are looking to build it in maybe later or are less committed to it, are more concerned about making sure they have the right capital to get their product off the ground.
And from my standpoint, there's a lot of folks that see really significant problems that they can fix, or have the ability to come close to fixing. And so when thinking about Princeton, New Jersey versus Newark, New Jersey, that are not that far apart, the fact that folks in Princeton, New Jersey live 14 years longer than those in Newark, people said, that's something that we can work on and we can fix. And so thinking about what goes into that, whether it be nutrition or other aspects, and thinking, well, how can my company solve this problem? And so there's a founder that I know that that's the problem that they're focused on, and they're thinking, well, what can we do to change this? And so it starts with understanding a problem that has generally a tie to what I'll call social good, and then working to fix it and saying that this is actually something that we could structure in a way that can be profitable as well, and something that, in certain cases can do well for the employees that they have in that case hired and that they're looking to move forward. So I think a lot of times it starts off with wanting to solve a major problem.
Other questions? Yeah, thank you.
So what has been the role of mentors in your life, or the role of mentoring that you've embraced, if that's a concept that's part of your moral compasses, and what's working for you? Who are the people who sort of inspired you, and do you mentor other people once you've established like your goals, and how do you go about that?
I have 3 people that I call mentors, but to be honest, I've only asked one of them formally to be my mentor, and a lot of them have turned into friends, and more important, like sponsors and advocates who have helped me move from role to role. Growing up in Denver, Colorado, Denver is like a blue dot in a red sea that ends up making the whole state purple. It's also very white, and I'm not talking about the snow. So the mentors that I chose for myself are Black women who helped me really see what it looks like to be a vulnerable, honest, and open leader, and a leader of color in a place where that's not the norm. So it's been a huge part of my career. Shout out Roxanne, Tamika, and my one lonely white mentor man, Matt. But I will say, being on the early side of my career, it's felt a little bit awkward to be a mentor to others. And I like to think of myself more as a coach for my direct reports and other younger women of color, to help them navigate systems that weren't built for them. But yeah, it's been a very important part of my journey so far, and I hope to just keep collecting mentors in my little cabinet of wonderful supporters.
I think I've done a successful job of collecting mentors, which is funny that you mentioned it, because different folks I'll call on for different questions that I come across, and I'm saying, oh, I just want a sounding board for this. And so I think it's really helpful to have individuals that you could ask for that guidance. But I haven't ever had one person who's kind of guided that entire path. And to some degree, it's because it's forever evolving and changing. And then also just given the world today, there's different folks that all ask about different things, whether it's being, my husband, works a lot of hours, as do I. We have 2 kids in the city. There's just a lot going on. There's somebody who's different that I'm going to call on for questions about, being a working professional woman, then somebody who I'm going to call on how to structure, a very specific venture deal. And so it really ranges. And I find that to be incredibly valuable. In addition, there's a ton that we do at Bernstein to support women, specifically in finance, both in our offices and then more broadly. And it's something that I think is really important, especially for financial services. And when you think about how far things have come, but how far they still need to go. And so it's something that I'm on a host of different committees that feature and focus on that topic alone. But in addition, just trying to find the time to let people know that they can come to you with the issues that they're dealing with. And so making that time to say what you're going through is important, especially I think early in the career, and for a lot of cases for young folks, but specifically young women in finance, there can be a lot of questions about different things or challenges. And so having that opportunity to be a sounding board, as many folks were for me earlier in my career and still are, I think is really important, and something that's just the way that you project yourself, every day when you're talking to individuals. And then those relationships oftentimes, at least in my case, have stuck with us, where we're able to continue to have that dialogue where they know they can call me with a random question or thought, or, oh, this was really challenging. And I can say, I don't have all the answers, but this is my thoughts on it at least. And I think it also gives your life more meaning too, to have those types of relationships in a deeper way. And so I value them a lot.
Oh, well, thanks. That's my mother. I put a plant in the audience.
I knew that. I knew that. I knew that.
But thank you for the question. I think this one speaks to the community, which I have several plants in the audience because I wanted to bring my community into this event. And also my desire to give back to this community, which is, I get very involved with the universities in teaching and wanting to let law students know there's a non-traditional path to making a meaningful career. And yeah, similar to what Alison said, make sure that I feel like I'm available to answer questions, offer my story as a way that's sort of a non-traditional path towards this. And really, as in growing my firm, something I very much believe in is making sure that this place is going to be a place that people do feel empowered to grow and be the kind of lawyer that can be a partner in, again, growing a community that is very meaningful to me.
Thank you. So seems like time's out.
Yeah, so I want to thank all of you. So please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So while I have the microphone, I'll hand it over to Erica for some closing remarks. But first, I just want to say what a wonderful day. So many thought-provoking conversations on a wide range of topics. We're going to have a networking reception next door. Let's say alcohol, food, digest all of this, think about all this, continue the conversations. I want to thank Erica Chung and John Levinson for being the catalyst behind this, putting these ideas together, and then Erica for making it happen. It's been a pleasure to work with you. So please join me in thanking Erica for making this happen. And let me give you a chance to say any closing remarks.
I just want to say equally thank you to Taya, thank you to Derek, thank you to John, thank you to the Tepper School of Business for helping us run this, to our wonderful speakers who gave us our time and their insights on a number of different topics. I'm really appreciative. And like with everything, this is the first experiment, hopefully in a lot of different events that we'll be running. So I appreciate all of you guys coming to our inaugural event. And as Taya mentioned, we have drinks and a reception next door. So we'd love for you guys to join us, and thank you so much.